to our second 2023 Local History Guild. Seems funny having the second one in March, but we skipped February. We had a bit of reorganizing that we wanted to do, and so you can see that we're on the Tuesday instead of the second Thursday. So that was part of the reorganizing, and it took us a month to figure that out. It took me a month to figure that out, and then we got it all worked out. And then so we're now broadcasting, on the second Tuesday of every month, our Local History Guild, right? So this is our second. You may recall our first of the year was a real fantastic discussion about island steamers, the Buzzards Bay steamboats that sailed between New Bedford and Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket and Hyannis and Falmouth, and we had Elizabeth York here, and we had Michael Harrison here, and Bob DeManch from Fairhaven, and Bo Van Riper from Martha's Vineyard. We had a great conversation, and we're going to do it again. So that was part one. We're going to do that one again this summer sometime. We haven't scheduled it yet, but just keep that on your schedules, and something to look forward to over the summer. Next month, we have a fellow named Simon Hill. Simon Hill in the UK is doing research on the relationships between the US and Liverpool and the whale fishery in the whaling trade. So this is brand new research, very interesting stuff, and we'll be talking to Simon Hill in April. And we've got other all sorts of interesting things coming down the pike. Boston Tea Party. We've got potentially local boat building. We've got local theaters. We know that there's some local theaters that need to be, these are historic structures that need to be rehabilitated, and we're going to talk a bit, amongst the community about that. And so, but tonight, this is a great one tonight. This is not really local history so much as, well, I guess it kind of is, because it took place here in the Whaling Museum. We got Mark Milloff and Aileen Callahan were at Stump the Scholars this year. So at the Moby-Dick Marathon, and Aileen was, she was one of the scholars that needed to be stumped, and we tried really hard and it didn't work very well. And then, but in the audience, of course, was Mark Milloff, and I was like, Mark Milloff's famous guy, man. I mean, it's like way back in 1995. Like when I was starting off, this book came out, Elizabeth Schultz, Unpainted to the Last. There's fabulous work of scholarship on the art of Moby-Dick. And, I love illustration. Like I've written a big book on whaling illustration. But what we're going to talk about tonight far transcends illustration. I mean, these folks they've seized on something, and we're going to find out what that something is that they have seized on that has propelled them to make really dynamic, in some cases mammothly large, startlingly chaotic, really sort of in some cases violent, in some cases just introspective and exciting artworks. So we have Mark Milloff. Mark Milloff is going to open our discussion this evening. Mark, who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? I'm a schmuck who lives in Westport, and I'm an artist, and I'm a pretty active musician as well, and I taught at RISD for quite a while. And I'm an avid consumer of Moby-Dick and all things kind of nautical. I've read a lot. I've read the Patrick O'Brien series like 7 times, and there was a time when I thought I could actually sail, and we went out, and I crashed the sailboat into the dock. But I thought because I'd read so much nautical literature, I could sail, but it's apparently not. And I'm really happy to be here, and it's totally unwarranted to say that I'm the star or anything here, because Aileen and Christopher and Michael, they're all they're all the stars. And so I'm just happy to be here.
Well, it's great. I mean, it's really great to have you. And Christopher, I didn't even introduce you. I mean, we had Aileen and Christopher both had shows hanging here at the Whaling Museum, and Christopher did a really bang up great talk. That was superb. When was that? That was like a year ago. That was a year ago. That was last January, wasn't it?
Wasn't it? Yeah, I guess it was.
Yeah. And I mean, that was really beautiful show hanging up in the Breitmeyer Gallery. You know, I was reading Elizabeth Schultz, many pages she devotes, Mark, to you and to your work. And that's really interesting and compelling to read about. But what is it about this book that drags this emotion out of you?
Well, I grew up in South Florida. So as a child, I just fished all the time. And then I got to high school and I read Moby-Dick, and it was immediately the best fishing story I'd ever read. And then I think before I got to college, I'd read it twice. And then I was making a lot of art, and I just wanted to visualize, like freeze frame the action sequences, and I was a big fan of movies, but I'm not a filmmaker. So I remember my original thought was to make them like they're on the movie screen, really, 20 feet wide and 10 feet tall. And then I would mine the book. I would read it, with a fine tooth comb. And there's just so many images. Also a big fan of Milton in Paradise Lost, but the difference is in Melville, things get cast in cement. You can just see them. In Milton, it's liquid. Satan goes from a toad to a frog to this, to that within like 5 lines. And so for me, Moby-Dick was like it. And it was just a gift that kept on giving. And then having read it so many times, it really filtered into everything that I did. I'll show some of that tonight.
Does that ring a bell with you, Christopher, when he starts talking about Milton? I think you were talking a little bit about Milton.
I love Milton, yeah. And epic poetry. But I agree, it is more fluid, and there's something really visual in Melville. And in the visual, I mean, there's a reason so many artists have, like yourself and Aileen, have responded visually to Moby-Dick, because the visual arts play a part in the book, like as they played a part in Melville's life. So it's so vivid. It's unusually vivid, I think, visually, imaginatively. It's so richly, vividly imagined that we see it and we want to make those images become real, I guess.
Your images are nothing alike. They're worlds, miles, universes apart. And that's true. Intriguing to me, that they're universes apart. This is not illustration. So this is not N.C. Wyeth we're talking about here. This is you're dragging up something out of yourselves in response to the book. I mean, sure, the book is great. It's a great book, but that doesn't get us to where you are.
That's true. And the title of this talk is, what is it? It references what? The unknowableness? What was it? What's the title of the talk that you chose?
Sublime or something.
Yeah, I forget.
Imaginable sublimity. Unimaginable sublimity.
Unimaginable sublimity. Love that.
Yeah, it's a great talk. Great title.
Great title. And that's right up my alley in terms of the art. And what I was interested in when approaching Moby-Dick was, I think what I respond to beyond the visual is the sense in the book of limits of human knowledge and the limits of human agency. I mean, that to me is one of the underlying themes of the book. And it can be expressed in terms of man versus nature or any number of other ways. But it seems to me that Melville just brings in like aspect after aspect of humanity and our attempt to make sense of the world, and then pulls out the rug. Like, talks about religion and its limitations. We see the ship owners who are hypocrites, and they're really just interested in money. He has Queequeg be tattooed with a map of the cosmos. Okay, he's literally trying to shrink the cosmos into a human form. And so, and there's the whole like pseudo scholarship that runs through Moby-Dick in the beginning with the sub librarian, all the way through to the chapters on the whales and the different folios of whales, where Melville's actually comparing, he's having Ishmael compare the whales to types of books, publications of scholarly books, so that he's really lambasting scholarship. So, and the whiteness of the whale chapter is the one where he really just says, look, the universe is unknowable. Everything has color only because our eyes create that. Other than that, it's a void, it's a blank, it's unimaginable. So there's the sublime, which we get from 19th century romantic literature and poetry, but then there's this unimaginable sublimity, which is what I like in Moby-Dick. This you can't visualize it. You know, he talks about something being, if it's human, it's incomplete. He says anything human must necessarily be incomplete. I promise nothing complete. It's that missing piece that we'll never get as humans, as we wrestle with where we belong in the universe. And to me, that was the real pull toward wanting to work with the book and work with Tar and the dark. It's more so I try to eschew direct imagery in my work, which is the opposite of illustration, as you said, Mike. I want to sort of visualize the unvisualizable, or visualize the inability to grasp what Melville calls the inscrutable.
Yeah, but as inscrutable maybe as your work is, Milloff is like in your face. And you know, it's like it's chaos, it's wild, and it's like in your face. And Aileen's work is probably, you know, how would you describe your own work, Aileen?
Well, I think my work is expressionistic, comes from that. And it's always been very subjective in the sense that, it's coming from within me. But I really find in Moby-Dick a tremendous profundity, which I'm attracted to. And it has layers and layers and layers of meanings, and I'm attracted to that. I'm also attracted to the drama, to the darkness, the lightness, the conflict of all sorts of interests taking place there. And the juxtaposition of paradox, in the sense of people can appear one way and something can appear one way and not be that way at all. And the fact of the elusive, also the fact that in art, our art is concrete. All three of us, when we make something, it's very concrete. It comes out as an image. But the image, if you work on it, it should work on itself. In other words, continue itself. I mean, the visual image, a visual painting, should continue itself. And I think that elusive, the continual endlessness of Moby-Dick and Melville in Moby-Dick is what draws me on very much. That you can't. I'm still have some ideas to do some more, and I've done a lot of, and my focus has always been the whale. I didn't say I was going to do the whale, but this is just what my focus has been. And it's always been aspects of the whale, the mouth of the whale, the skin of the whale, the bones of the whale, the actual, when it breaches, how does that look? And I have a drawing that, it's going up, but you're looking down at the breach. You're looking from above at a breach, and most of us look above. So it gives you, as an artist, tremendous freedom to talk about kinds of movements in human life, in our world, that correspond to these kinds of things that are going on in Moby-Dick. So there are levels of meanings that extend into not only ourselves personally, but to all of what's going on in the world, conflicts and all sorts of things. So it's endless, the kinds of meanings you can have. And of course, it has death in it. It's death and the facing of death and the ennoblement of death and the disennoblement of death and all, and of course, life itself and how is that? So it's question within Moby-Dick that makes it such a profound novel, which everyone, all over the world is attracted to. And as artists, I think it draws you on. All of those kinds of things draw you on, because art is, the more I go on in art, the more I realize it as an extension, not officially, but unofficially, an extension of philosophy, that it really is a way of thinking about how we're formulating what it is to be alive, what it is to be on this earth and this world, in this world now, 2023 and before. And this is kind of joining of ideas. A visual idea can keep within it a theme, an idea. It is its own visual idea, but it also contains layers of ideas that are also visual, but also non-visual, layers of ideas that can accumulate from verbs and from nouns and from put together and ideas that human beings make. So I really am not you'd think you'd come to the end, but I'm sure all three of us feel the same way. There's still more to do. And because it is so profound.
As a creator, do you care what people think about your work?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
You know what?
I have another question for you, but that question popped in my head.
That's
you're going to create whether you.
No, it's apropos of me, because my work is very strong, and I really do not, when I'm in the studio. No, I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about, does this have meaning? How will I want it to have meaning. I'm just with it and myself, and then I'm living in the world. I'm taking out, I watch the news, I, read and all this other stuff. So all of that comes into it. And actually, I think all our lives, all my whole life, even as a child, I'm drawing on aspects of childhood in my work, wonderful things I've seen and all kinds of things. So no, I don't think of that at all. I don't think, because my deep belief is that we're all, when you're very true, and we hope we're true, when you're very true, that's when people can join with you. And that's when people can join with your work as well, if you're really true.
Hey, I've got a question for you. You guys maybe can help me out. Elizabeth Schultz used a word to describe the eye of Mark Milloff's sperm whale. And the word is atropophaic. Atropophaic. And I looked it up, and I don't know what the word means. Do you know what atropophaic means?
Do you think prophaic comes from prophecy? Is she talking about that? That's all
I don't know.
I think it might be Atropos, which was one of the fates. There was Lachesis, Clotho, and Atropos, and
Anthropos, yeah. In Greek, anthropos means
Greek
man.
mythology. So like a reference to sort of death. Atrophy, atrophos.
Oh, good. That's good. Yeah, that could be.
Atropophaic.
Atropophaic, yeah.
The eyeballs,
I guess.
like in Mark Milloff sperm whales, the eyeballs are like this gigantic.
I wonder if she's taking from the Greek, which is anthropos in Greek means man. So I wonder if she's saying that the eyeball of the, I don't know, but I wonder if she means that the eyeball of the whale is, something that you can relate to as a recognizable eyeball.
No, it's not andro, it's atro, right?
Atro, yeah, right.
ATRO, yeah.
It's not anthro. Yeah, that's true. But I just threw it out as an idea.
Yeah.
The closest one could get.
Sorry about that. I thought, maybe.
No, it's good.
I think I have a picture of the fates here. Go ahead.
So you want to look at some art, Mark?
Sure. Here, I'll share the screen.
You could tell us what's going on. You too started at your very beginning, but
yeah.
Oh, nice.
Let me see if I can get it to be full screen here.
I just wanted to say that I looked up Atropos, and she's the fate. She's the one who cuts the thread of life.
Oh, great. Excellent.
wow.
That's excellent. Is it spelled the same way?
Yeah, Atropos.
Oh, thank you. That's great. Cuts the thread of life. Oh, good.
Look at this
Well,
work.
So this
Wow.
is back like around 1981, 82, and it's about 15 feet wide by about 8 feet tall. It's
Wow.
stripping the whale.
Wow.
And there's Queequeg, who's I consider all the harpooneers superheroes. They're just amazing, lofty human beings.
Wow.
And the monkey rope, which interestingly at the stump the experts, and where Aileen was an expert, I was just there as a stump. I just want to make that clear. Like a tree, that's a joke. And but they said there was no evidence that there ever was a monkey rope. What the hammock that the person cutting the whale. There was also somebody there who was saying there was no evidence of the push pull or the, and so it was but I don't know. I of course accepted it. So, and then the person holding Queequeg, they would always have the best friend of the person holding them in the hammock with the idea that they're the least likely to drop them into
Right.
the sharks that are feasting on the whale as quickly as they're trying to strip the fat off of it. And so this was pastels, and at the time we had moved to the Berkshires, and we were literally just a mile away from Hawthorne's little red house. And but that really, I didn't even know that at that point. And I was vaguely aware that Melville had come from Pittsfield. I'd read the book at that point maybe 3 times, but it was just like, this was so much fun. It was like I was making a movie. And there's this was the great, the living wall, it's the chapter with the Grand Armada where they all crash in. This is like 25 feet wide by about 8 feet tall. And again, it's all pastels. And for me, these were like the most wonderful chess game. When they were still in drawing, it looked like the biggest mess possible. And then I'd color code the pastels to try to figure out what I wanted to keep and what I wanted to get rid of. And so, everybody's crashing together. Listening to you talk about the book, I'm not a terribly deep thinker. I just go after the imagery. It's like the imagery gets me. I like the cinematic quality of it. And so there the boats, the harpooneers, there's Fadala, and how many whales could I fit in the picture? And what's going on? And I just had a good time with it. And this is a close-up. And there's whale eyes all over it. There's kind of, dotting, I don't know, there's whale eye, there's, they're there.
Too.
Yeah, the sharks, feeding constantly.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is a piece much more recent. This is drawn up toward heaven as if by invisible wire. That scene toward the end where the whale comes up under the boat, but I just love that sentence, drawn up toward heaven as if by invisible wire. And so I imagined Ahab's boat kind of just lifting into the air and everything, kind of happening below it. This is actually, I have a lot of these, and there's only 2 that live out in the world. This one is in an architect's office in San Francisco, and the very first one, Stripping the Whale, has been up at the Berkshire Museum for like 30 plus years. So
Do they own it?
Yes, they own
Own
it.
it?
They bought it a long
great.
time ago.
Super.
And so yeah, this is pastel, and it's hung without any, it actually looks like a tapestry when it's up. I would love to turn these into tapestries. I've kind of fiddled with that, the idea, and but haven't done it yet. And so again, this is close to 11 feet tall by about 15 feet wide, I think.
What's the
And,
substrate? Is it paper? Is it on paper?
It's just Stonehenge paper, that I buy in like 100-yard rolls. And And so this was a show in New York City in the 80s. And so it was just two of them, and then they're up unprotected. I remember the one on the left stripping the whale. There was a big crowd in the gallery, and somebody dropped their purse. And when she bent over, her backside went into the pastel.
Oh,
And I remember she moved away from it, and she kind of had an imprint of what was on the pastel, which
Great.
I was able to fix. And she was a little irritated that she'd gotten an ear, but it looked pretty good. And so this is relatively recent, since I moved to Providence. This was that point, the lake that ends toward the center of the book, when they're in the Grand Armada and suddenly they get into this very quiet zone. There was actually another panel of this, but there was a leak in my studio. It got destroyed, and then I figured I liked it as a 2-panel thing anyway. This is Fata Morgana, the end, he uses that term, but it's the last scene, where everything is spinning around, and there's poor Pip who's lost his arm, and I don't know if he actually lost his arm. There's Queequeg upper left, and there's Tashtigo with his hammer, and there's a marlin, and there's a lot of eyeballs down at the bottom, and so that's that, and that's about 15 feet wide. This is a very long piece. It's the dying whale, and it's that scene. I think it might be called the dying whale, where Ahab stands up and talks for a long time, and the whale that's dying always faces toward the setting sun, and they were out far away from the boat, and so they had to spend the night with one lantern. And let's see, there's a painting that is in my son's house, and it's about 8 feet long, and it's Queequeg rescuing Tashtigo from the head of the whale. And it's oil, and it's about 8 feet wide. And
Seems like whaling.
then I did what?
Seems like whaling itself is quite of interest to you, like the way. Like
I mean, it is. It wasn't so much whaling at book. I just loved the book, and I'm a binge consumer. So now I've read it, probably over 20 times, and like all Melville fans, you become kind of a Wikipedia on it. Like you just, can kind of just know, like if somebody says, did Starbucks drink a lot of coffee? You can say, no, the coffee's never even mentioned in the book, that kind of thing. And, but so then I wanted to do it. So I did it again in pastel. And then this was a kind of small thing when Ahab lost his egg. It was like 6 feet wide. This is Chase the Third Day, and it's about 7 feet wide. This is Queequeg's last dive, I think I call this. It's the boat is going down. Queequeg is still being a superhero. I have him, killing a shark and trying to protect Tashtigo, who I imagine was kind of being by an octopus, and everything is dropping to the bottom of the ocean. In the upper left, there's a hammerhead shark carrying somebody away. And I like the little finger sticking out of the shark's mouth at the bottom left. And so I had fun with that. Yeah. And, I always had fun with Queequeg's tattoos. They're first described as the checkerboard, but then the frogs crawling up his legs, but then later the constellation. So I would always have fun with the tattoos on Queequeg. And this one, I think, this was the one that's in the archivist's office. This is drawn up toward heaven. These are new things. These are very small. And I really love pastel, but I like painting as well. But also I'm an old guy now, and I like to work small. And this is like clay. It's kind of a relief. And then there's lead white on it, and then there's dry pigment. And so this is Ishmael on Queequeg's coffin, just kind of floating. So it's about 12 or 14 inches square. And then this is another version of that because I liked it. I wanted to try it again. And this is like a boat in a white squall. Again, I like gravelly, but I love pastel. And so I'm looking for that in paint. So I use dry pigment. This is brand new. This is just, I just kind of threw this off. You know, there's the painting with the impaled whale, but he describes it. I just did an impaled whale. Again, it's very small, like 12 inches square. And these are my guitars. I call them poontars because they're all potential harpoons, but I've actually had to, the bottom two, I had to take the harpoons off because the very bottom one had a real hand-hammered 19th century harpoon. And I was playing in a theater and a youngie ran on stage and ran into a harpoon and pierced her leg. And I realized, okay, the harpoons are a liability. Can't play with harpoons anymore. And then, you know, I've had a long career and I like painting. I like art with imagery and without imagery, just like I like music with words and without words. And so I've done a lot of painting. Oh, that's a new thing. It's a self-portrait as Jonah.
Wow.
And again, that's a little tiny thing, maybe 12 by 14 or 16 inches.
Wow.
And then I also do these oceany things, and I've done them forever since grad school, but they're all part of my love of ocean. You know, I grew up in South Florida, so it's ocean, Moby-Dick, ocean, Moby-Dick. So that's a manta ray, and that was a tribute to Paradise Lost right there. Wow. That was Satan, sin, and death, and let's see, and yeah, things. But then I had years where I was working without imagery, just paint, and I had this series that I did many paintings that I called The Whiteness of the Whale. And there's so many points in Melville where he describes concentric rings floating up from the bottom, indicate, and that just kind of got me. And so I, you know, did many of these, you know, that were all kind of related. They're just oil, and they weigh a lot. You know, a 30 by 30 inch painting can weigh like 150 pounds.
Wow.
So I'm being an old guy, I don't do those anymore. And, you know, so there were these, and yeah, so I just keep working, and Moby-Dick is still giving to me. You know, I still love, I'm really having a good time doing these small pieces based on it. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. And so let's see if I can figure out how this stuff. For some reason, I am.
You're still at it.
Yeah.
You're still inspired.
Yeah. So the share stopped, right? Yeah, the share stopped.
So
Yeah.
so you're still inspired.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I love it.
How about you,
Love
Chuck?
it.
You're still inspired as well? You still find more in you to respond to this book?
Are you talking to Chris?
About all of you.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I really do. I have more to say. I have more things to do. I have to, you know, for the next thing, you know, and I mean, as I say, it's, you'd think, is it really, the question would come, is it the images that that Melville paints and in his words? And he does use, he's extremely visual in what he says, you know, and he's using, like we said, like Chris, we were talking over that, you know, that he, and in this talk I gave, you know, at the museum, I was pointing out the idea that Melville's visual words, propelled the whole idea of the terror of Moby-Dick and established him as a figure of awe. And he continues that throughout, you know, continually throughout the book. But he is really giving, you know, I think I mentioned the crooked jaw, not a straight jaw, you know, and then I was just amazed that we went through this COVID, you know, terrible thing, which we're still in actually. And Melville puts plague in the book in chapter 71. So that's why I did all those watercolors for the.
Yeah, let's look at a couple of those, Aileen. Let's look at a couple of those pieces that you showed.
Do you have any? I mean, do you have them? Did you want me to show them or?
Yeah, I think you have them on your screen, don't you?
I don't have. I can get those. I didn't put those up because I thought
You have some pieces that you wanted to share. I think it'd be worth
but
it.
they weren't those particular pieces.
Right.
But yes, because I'd be happy. Well, I could go and find them, where they are. But in fact, actually, I can go right now if you want to. But I can move on if you, however you want to.
Aileen, you did, didn't you do a Spouter Inn painting yourself?
Yes, I did, and
Is that, can you find that?
yes, that would be.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. If I could find, yeah, here it is. Here it is. Here's the Spouter Inn painting. That was in the talk, and it was talking about vanishing boundaries. I was making that point about vanishing boundaries. Now, let me go to screen share. It says, okay, right here, and then I go here. I think I hope I'm doing the right thing. I'm sorry. I don't think I.
All right, take your time. We'll get there. Nobody's in a rush here.
Oh, well, here's what I wanted to do is, let me see. No, I wanted to get this one here on the screen. Ah, there it is. Okay, good. But it's not on the screen. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Great.
Get it nice and big. Hit
Yes.
the green button up there. There it is. Yep.
That's a Spouter Inn painting that was in the talk. And it's about, like, I would say 12 by 10 or something like that, inches. And it's a watercolor. And what I was talking about is the idea of vanishing boundaries and how haunting this is. And right at the beginning of the book, Melville beckons artists to come on because he's talking about the idea of this whale being impossibly impaled on a ship. And we know how big ships are. So how big does the whale have to be? So already he's creating this image of awe, which is part of that sublimity of the 19th century, that the sense of awe in landscape and in natural things. And also the vanishing boundaries, how this works in the painting and in Melville's work. He's talking about that Spouter Inn painting that, it's so dark and it joins with the darkness. It's clumps of dark. And so this is what I did this to do exactly that. And I actually had it too light. And then I had to bring it down further. When I first did it, I thought, well, this will do, but it came out too light. So I brought it down further. And even up here, the idea that the end of the whale continues, it's almost like, and you can showing motion, the idea of it, the face is the head is going to keep coming forward. But yes, that's the Spouter painting. And I, let me see if I can, to leave the, I'm getting this down, aren't I? Hey, I did it. Yeah, it's good. So we've got this. Should I try to get rid of this, or I don't know. Actually, I think I can find those if I can. Yeah, here they are. Pestilence. Here's some pestilence things. Here we go. I can put some of these up. I mean,
Wow, cool.
Okay, great. I don't know which one you want. There's one that was always on, which is kind of interesting for me because I spent some time in Mexico on a fellowship, and there was an Olmec heads. The Olmeca, the Indians. I was very struck by them. I did another painting and stuff, not on this series, but this is almost like the way the Olmec heads read. It's like this, and it's pushing the boundaries. This is pestilence. I'm doing the pestilence that's relating to chapter 71 of Moby-Dick. And, it's very interesting when you think about the colors of pestilence because, red, yellow, blue, primary colors, but red is you can view it that way. It is an infection color. Yellow, of course, bilious. Melville was talking about bilious. Yellow is also an infection color. Even green is an infection. Even blue. When you're turning blue, it's unhealthy, and on and on and on. So it's a way. I think I mentioned in that speech I was giving that what I was after were colors that weren't the colors of Monet. And I've been very enamored of the Impressionists and that whole palette and everything. But in this, it was to make them seem electric without having bought electric, fluorescent colors. And I didn't. These are not fluorescent colors. And to make them seem, to almost like this is curved, the line is curved here so that the image moves from the front away from you like this, away, pushing the edges of the right here on this side, pushing the edges of the whole image formation. And down here, it was this is all watercolor. It's all watercolor. All these works were watercolor. And when I was working in watercolor, I realized it was doing everything I wanted to do, like up here, the light on top of the dark and so forth, so on. It could do that, and dark coming through. And let me see if I can do this. And wait, let's see if I can. Let's see if that would do it. How did I do that before? Let me see. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, good. Okay. No, I'm back again. Let me see. I'm
You can
sorry.
escape.
Oh, escape. That's got it. That's it. That's what you do. Okay. Let's see if I'm pushing escape, but it's not working. Let's see. I'm sorry. No, it goes back to that. Let's see. Does anybody know how to get out of this? To move back? I did it before.
Push the escape button at the top left.
I'm pushing it on my thing. Let me see if I have anything up here. I don't see it. I'm pushing it on my computer, but it's not working. Let's see. Stop share. No. Okay. Let's see if I stop share. There we are. Okay. Now I just want to show you. We were talking before. Well, you seem to like. Well, first let me show this one. This one is an older. When I say 1990s, older work in the sense of, and that is called Breaching Heart, and it's a big painting. It's in 3 sections, 1, 2, 3. And I had a studio that would allow me to make these bigger paintings in sections, which I wanted. I wanted this line in there to give it sort of dynamic. And the heart is the heart of Moby-Dick, breaching heart. And in doing it as an artist, I made huge, top layer. And Hans Hofmann, the famous 20th century artist, was always talking about the top of the painting.
Yeah, Aileen, you need to share your screen again, please.
Oh, it's not on the screen. Let me see. Okay.
Thanks, Barbara.
Oh, it's not coming up. Okay. Let me see.
Or just do what you did last time and pull the, find the painting.
Now is it?
No, you want to share your screen?
Okay, let me just escape again. I keep clicking the screen. Then I click on this. I think that's the key. Is that doing it?
Yes.
Yeah, we got a painting there.
Okay, great. We'll just go like that. It's fine. And so, but in any case, wait, see if I can make it bigger. Yeah. Can you all see it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it comes at you. And I was pushing the front of the sort of a frontal approach so that the viewer and the image are very close to one another. But by putting in this green up here, this sort of turquoise, it makes the red seem redder because it's a near complement. And down here, the same thing. These are like colors. They're they could be flags of ships. In other words, these, and they also could be like medals of ships. By that MED, medals for like soldiers' medals. So that there's an overlaying of meanings here. That the breaching heart is the heart of Moby-Dick, and I do not view him. I mean, I did in my talk, and I think that I can understand as an antagonist, but I also have sympathy for Moby-Dick. That's why the hunting, you're born to be hunted in that era. And so this is a very courageous, to me, it's a very courageous movement for Moby-Dick to breach like this, to breach with a heart. I like it. I mean, I like that idea, breaching with your heart. And so I'm going to show this one more painting because I think if I can get to it, it would be great. Let's see if I can go down here. Let's see. I'm sorry. I wish I could do this better. No. Okay. I wonder why it's not working. Preview. Let's see. Desktop. Okay. Let's go to the desktop and see if we can. I'm sorry.
Go ahead and escape from here, and then you can reopen again.
Oh, yes, just escape. Start video. Did I do escape? Do I escape from? No. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I saw that. Now I know what I'm doing, right? Okay, so now I'm going to do this last one. I can show more. I mean, maybe this one. I don't know how much time we have. I want Chris to have enough time here. Can you see this one or not? No,
no, we're not seeing anything now. We're not even seeing you. So you should to click your camera back on so we can see you, and then we can see your screen.
There. I'm sorry. There I am.
Okay, there you are. Now
And
you
then,
wanna share your screen again, Aileen.
okay, great. I share the screen, then I click on this, and I think this is right. I click on this, and then let's see if I can get this on there because it might be interesting. Do you see that or not? It didn't come on.
No, not yet.
Okay. I wonder what I'm doing wrong.
Now, there we go. Okay, now,
Well, Now, but
what
this is,
painting do you want? What
well, I
painting do you
wanted to
want?
do it. I wanted to do a different painting. I wanted to do this one.
Which one?
It's a furnace mouth. Let me
Furnace mouth. Okay, great.
see if I think you'd enjoy that one.
It's right there on your desktop.
Yes, on the desktop. So I go,
Furnace mouth is right there.
okay, furnace mouth. There it is.
That one, that's Fireheart.
Oh, no, sorry, you're right. Sorry, you're right.
Furnace mouth 1,
Furnace mouth 1.
right next to Fireheart. There it is.
Okay, good. Now, oh yes, good. Okay, there we are. Anyway, so that is a big painting, and it's the furnace mouth. They did a whole series of furnace mouths with Moby-Dick, because you notice how there's the fire on the ship, and there's the smoldering taking apart of the whale. And this is another approach of adding fire to the mouth of Moby-Dick, the fire mouth, and it has all sorts of ramifications because the Leviathan mouth historically is a very powerful image in art history. And not only that, it's a trend, it's like a transforming, fire transforms whatever it touches. So this is why I did this work. And you know, it has to do with Moby-Dick, and it's taking Moby-Dick, it's taking aspects of Moby-Dick, and then for me, I can still make works that I want to make. You know, it's like the last part of this is inspiration, that Moby-Dick is the inspiration for this. The mouth of Moby-Dick is a powerful mouth. It's a very big mouth. The sperm whale's mouth is very big. I want to leave time for Chris, so let me just get out of here. And because Chris, you want to get your things on here. How am I doing this? No video. Okay. It's funny that I've done it before.
Looks like I can stop your sharing.
Yeah, good. See if you can. That would be great. Oh, I see. I keep forgetting what. Yeah. Okay. Good.
So this is my spouter in painting. So we've all three of us have shown spouter in paintings. So this is for anyone watching. This is the early chapter in Moby-Dick when Ishmael walks into the Spouter Inn pub and sees this very ambiguous, dark, besmirched painting that's a foreboding, a foreshadowing of the wreck of the Pequod, and it's described as ultimately a whale trying to leap over a ship in a storm, getting impaled by the 3 masts. And I just think it's so cool that both of us, all 3 of us, were feeling compelled to make that. That was the first image that I painted in this series that made me want to do it. But Aileen, also too, you mentioned Mark, you mentioned the Fata Morgana, and which is a neat concept too of it's an illusion that can happen, a mirage that happens at the horizon of on the ocean sometimes. And so this is a all tar painting, and this is more in line with the kind of stuff that I do, where it's very ambiguous and abstract, but it's called Fata Morgana, and you get the suggestion of a horizon line. And although it's hard to see here, there's also there's a suggestion of a ship,
Right.
Yeah.
right on the horizon, but it's about to be just engulfed in all this, ambiguous darkness. And finally, just a quick glimpse also of, what I'm continuing to do with the series and with the book. While this isn't necessarily a recent painting, I have more recent ones, but this one is a better example of what I'd like to mention, which is that we talked about how in Moby-Dick there's just the suggestion of so much. So here is one of my paintings from the series this one's called Yes, the World's a Ship on Its Passage Out. And that's also a quote like Mark, I used quotes from the novel to title the works.
Mhm.
And this one's, so it's very ambiguous, very abstract, almost non-representational, that you get the little suggestion of a ship over on the right-hand side, sort of a cross or a mast up there. And you can imagine that the viewer sort of has to put together some of the pieces to imagine like bits of ships. But the idea is the feeling of it, you know, the ambiguity of it, the unknowableness of the whale and of the universe to us. That really is the thread that continues to fascinate me in the book, and that I'm continuing to pursue in my own stuff.
So at least two of you are teachers. Christopher, are you a teacher as well?
Yeah, I am. I once taught art history regularly, but now I just do private lessons and workshops.
Does this come up? I mean, is this still a compelling notion among students that this is that you know you can encounter inspiration or even life-changing perceptions, you know, in great literature, or you know, in this book in particular, but I mean, I'm sure that the same could be done for other great literature as well.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to get people to think about meaning in paintings at all these days. I find that, you know, especially beginning students. I teach a lot of beginning painters, and the idea of that it has to be about something, that it has to mean something, like you said, Aileen, is scary to them. You know, it's like, wait a minute, you know, I just want to know how to paint a shadow and some light. You know, whole idea of so it all, you know, this can seem very intellectual, very heady and everything, but no, when you see the work, it's visceral, and that's true of all of our work. And I think that's why we're visual artists and not writers, you know, because it it's so immediate. But it's the idea that that art is about, that art is for understanding the world and understanding our place in it. Like who are we, and where have we come? Where are we going? I feel like that Moby-Dick is that way too for me. It's a kind of prophetic book. It's a vivid imagery, but it's also archetypal imagery all the way through. And I think that's its pull on all of us too. It's symbolic, and it's suggestive and associative, and it's metaphorical. The ship going down, the ship, humanity coming up against in our world now. You know, what was Melville's world like then, and what was he writing about? What was Turner's world like? What was he painting? He was painting a lot of images of the Industrial Revolution. We don't really think of Turner that way, but there've been some revisionist
Yeah,
exhibitions lately.
Monet too, right? I saw an
Yeah,
article recently about that.
Monet too. That's right. All these guys were. That's what art does. I think that, you know, it's artists have to grapple with their own time through the lens of imagery and through the creation of a visual language. It's personal, but it's also social. I mean, it has that multi-dimension that the important art has. I think it has something to tell us about ourselves and about our world. And it's inexhaustible too. Like, as we're all looking, we're talking in the 21st century about this book written in 1851.
Hey, thousands of people turn up every year to read Moby Dick out loud at the Whaling Museum, and that's just at our museum. That's not counting, you know, where they go to Mystic Seaport and elsewhere. But James Norton is one of our participants this evening out there in the audience, and he says, "Is there a particular passage or a theme that all three of you artists have addressed in one of your works?" I guess you'd have to know each other's work pretty well in order to answer that. But
I think the only one is the one that you've seen images of, you know, that the painting in the Spatter Inn.
I think we're all interested in the kind of elusiveness and mysteriousness of this kind of nautical motion, nautical movement, and those entities that are within it, including human beings and the whale. And so we do it in a different way. But I think we're drawn to this. It's like a vortex, brings us into this kind of motion.
I don't know. You know, when you've read it so many times, for me, it just feels comforting and at home, and to be able to open it at any point, and you don't need to read 100 pages before, 100 pages after. You just know what's going on. So, you know, I think it changes over the years. You know, from the first readings to when there's many, it just feels it's just fun, and even you know, even reading about the particulars, the chapters about the whales, you know, which people, when you talk to people who've read it the first time, they go, I don't want to read those chapters of folio. And, but even those become fun, you know, with familiarity, it all becomes like friends, you know, each chapter is its own friend. And, you know, the smacking of the shark's lips in, you know, that chapter, and and I loved the answer, you know, because at the Stump the People, you know, about Bulkington, you know, and then Bob Wallace, you know, I had never found Bulkington after that first, you know, chapter or two, and then Bob said, oh, like it was chapter 270 or something. There's he's mentioned sleeping, and somehow I had missed that. And but that was interesting, and so I don't know. It just is it's comfortable. It's a fun book to read.
I think some people might think, because they view it as an adventure story, why don't we just take all the stuff out on whales and all this other stuff and just have the adventure? They're going out and then they come, you know. But actually, I think, you know, Melville, that's building the whole concept in the reader of whales, you know, goes through, he actually takes apart the whale, the skin and everything, which interests me. They did a whole series on skin. So all of the things he puts in is augmenting this sense of awe, and just that word you use, sublimity, he's augmenting it. So you can't leave anything out. People say, oh, I'm so bored with this, you know, I can't go on, all these whales and all, you know. No, it's the whole world, that world you're entering of scale and power, a power that cannot be tamed.
But it's also interesting to think that he's writing this because he loves Hawthorne, and he wants to emulate Hawthorne, and he wants to do something that's as, you know, as gripping, riveting, and as morally and philosophically deep as Hawthorne. And I love, you know, having lived out there, thinking of them hiking up and having donuts at the top of that mountain between Stockbridge and Great Barrington. And the funny thing is, you know, between Hawthorne and Melville, I think, you know, Melville's a much bigger writer. You know, Hawthorne, you know, was great with these nuggets and, you know, Rappaccini's garden and the, you know, the snake in the chest and everything. But Melville, you know, not only, you know, met his friend in his own terms, but he really transcended Hawthorne. And then there's the great tragedy, how Melville ended his life, and, you know, in New York City, and whatever, sorting letters or something like that. You know, you think, but then the wonderful rebirth in the, you know, 1930s and 40s when the painters discovered him.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Mary Kay Burkhardt Edwards says she's thrilled that all three of you had a Spouter Inn painting. And let's see, another one of our visitors, Barbara, says that she's had a great time. She wants to sign up for the Whaling Museum, so that's great. She has an artist friend who doesn't talk about their art, so it's great to hear you guys talk about your art. And I got to tell you, you know, I was thrilled that you agreed to come out and talk tonight and share your inspiration and your talent and you know, your ideas that are bigger than the work that you do. They're bigger than the work that you draw from. you know, you're creating a permanent thing. And evidently it's a voyage that you're all on, and sharing with us. So, you know, thanks for that. And you know, I hope you have continue to have a fabulous voyage with lots of discoveries along the way. So we've actually reached our stopping point.
Mm.
So you know, it's the incredibly awkward part of the evening, you know, where you have to say, you know, good night, and then you hit leave, and it's like it's over, it's done.
I know.
It's
So
just
intense,
awkward. But you know, I really do want to thank you all for coming out, and
Thank you.
it was wonderful seeing you again, Christopher, Aileen. It was wonderful seeing you again, Mark.
Thanks so much. Thank
Yeah.
you so
Thank
much
you
for
very much.
inviting me to do this. Yeah.
And your title was great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad you. You know, you just reach into Moby-Dick, and he gives you everything you need.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, all right. We'll see you all next time.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Nice to see you. Hi, Chris and Mark. Good to see
Hi,
you.
Aileen.
Bye-bye.